On the southern edge of the savannah, where the reserve ends and the pastures begin, there was a small farm. It was here that one morning, a farm sheepdog named Luna, a smart, well-balanced dog who guarded the farm, went out. In the tall grass at the edge of the field, she heard a faint rustling. Cautious but curious, Luna approached and froze. Before her lay 3 tiny cheetah cubs, newborns. They were barely breathing, squeaking, trembling, blind and alone. Their mother was nowhere to be seen. Luna did not bark. She came closer. She sniffed one of them. Then she lay down next to it. At that moment, something ancient and instinctive kicked in, and she simply stayed. When Farmer John came out at the dog's call, he first thought she had caught game. But then he saw Luna licking one of the cubs, gently nudging it with her nose, as if it were her own puppy. "Where's their mother?" he muttered. The farmer knew that if he didn't intervene, they wouldn't survive. And if Luna had accepted them, this might be their only chance. Farmer John carefully picked up one of the cheetah cubs. It weighed less than a kilogram, trembled, and whimpered softly. The others barely moved. Without their mother and milk, they would not survive even a day. He looked at Luna. She watched every movement intently, as if she already considered herself their mother. She never growled or left. On the contrary, when John opened the barn to move the cheetah cubs into the warmth, she was the first to go inside and lay down in the corner, as if inviting them to join her. And so began the most unusual chapter in John's life. He set up a makeshift enclosure in the old feed storage room, with bedding, heating, and bottles of goat's milk. Luna hardly ever left. When he fed the cubs, she watched closely, and afterwards she licked their bellies, as if she understood that this was what real mothers did. The first few days were difficult. One of the cheetah cubs didn't eat for a long time, and John spent the whole night with him, warming him under a lamp. Luna didn't leave his side. She sat nearby and rested her muzzle on the edge of the box when the baby fell asleep. The animals grew quickly. On the 4th day, one of them stood up on its paws for the first time, and stumbling, took a few steps. Straight toward Luna. It bumped into her side, and she growled softly, not aggressively, but almost like a cat protecting her young. Neighbors who had heard the rumors began to show up at the farm. "It's dangerous, John," they said. "Cheetahs are wild. Sooner or later, their instincts will take over." But he watched Luna sleep, huddled against 3 spotted balls, and didn't believe in the threat. In this silence under the lamp, on the hay, something greater than mere survival was being born. It was a real family. 3 weeks passed. The 3 cheetah cubs grew before our eyes. They were already walking confidently, playing with each other, nimbly climbing hay bales and chasing moths in the morning sun. Their movements were graceful and swift. Nature was gradually reminding them of itself. But no matter how much they grew up, every evening they returned to Luna. She didn't let them stray far. She would call them back with a low growl if anyone wandered too far, and she still licked them after meals, as if they were her own puppies. Farmer John began to notice something else. The cheetah cubs showed speed in their games, and sharpness. One of the cubs, the largest, once jumped on Luna too sharply, and she growled seriously for a second. But she quickly came to her senses, licked his ear, and lay down next to him. John understood that cheetahs don't stay cubs forever, but it was too early to separate them from the one who had become their mother. And too late to pretend that nothing had happened. A real bond had formed between the dog and these wild cats. An instinct that knew no boundaries between species. One day, Luna sat by the barn and gazed at the savanna horizon. The wind played with her fur, and the cheetah cubs dozed at her paws. It seemed as if she understood that they would soon be gone. But for now, they were still together. Their family, strange but real, was still together. A month passed. The cheetah cubs grew noticeably larger. Their spots became clearer, their movements more precise, their muscles stronger. They increasingly ran away beyond the farm, returning only in the evening. Sometimes, John found traces of their claws on trees or the corpses of small animals near the barn. Luna watched. She didn't interfere, but she was always waiting. She continued to sleep next to them, guarding them, but she no longer tried to keep them there. Her fur became slightly duller, and her eyes took on a weary look, as if she knew that her role was coming to an end. One day, a strange jeep arrived at the farm. It was specialists from a nature conservation fund. They had heard about the unusual family from one of the neighbors and came with papers and proposals. The cheetahs had to be returned to the wild. They needed to be taught to hunt, to adapt, and to be prepared for release into a nature reserve. "They can't live with humans forever," said one of the ecologists. "But she's their mother," John replied quietly, looking at Luna lying by the gate. The cheetah cubs were playing in the dust, and she was watching them calmly, as if she could hear every word. Their departure was only a matter of time. The next morning, one of the cheetah cubs did not return on time. Luna began to pace around the yard, howling and running along the fence. When the cub finally appeared with scratches on its side, her reaction was furious. She sniffed him, stood between him and the jungle, not letting him leave again. It was the first and last time she tried to keep them, because that same night she went to sleep alone. After the specialists arrived at the farm, a new phase began for the cheetah cubs and Luna. Their lives changed. Now it was not just domestic life, but preparation for their return to the savannah. John and the ecologists built a more spacious enclosure, a fenced-in area with wild grass and bushes. Here, the cheetah cubs learned to hunt live rabbits, run faster, hide, and hear rustling sounds. At first, Luna did not understand why this new place was necessary and kept her distance, but soon she began to appear more often near the enclosure, watching her children play, and even trying to imitate their games. Hunting was not easy at first. Sometimes the cubs were too slow, fell, or ran too slowly after their prey. But with each passing day, they became stronger and more agile. One of them, the most agile, caught his first prey. It was a moment of joy and pride for the whole team. Luna looked at them as if she understood that her role in their lives would soon become even smaller. But she was still ready to come to the rescue if something went wrong. However, the tension was growing. Sometimes the cheetah cubs ventured outside the enclosure at night, and John and the scientists worried. Was it dangerous? Would the wild nature accept them? But they knew that freedom was not a choice, but a necessity. After weeks of training and endless attempts at hunting, the cheetah cubs became true hunters, fast, agile, and cautious. But at that very moment, the most difficult part began: preparing to say goodbye. John and the ecologists knew that soon they would have to release their charges into the wild savannah, where there were no humans, and every day was a test of survival. Luna seemed calm, but John could see a deep sadness in her eyes. She still cared for the cheetah cubs, lying next to them at night. But sometimes she would retreat into the shadows for a moment, as if gathering strength before the inevitable. John often spoke to her quietly, stroking her behind the ear, trying to explain that this was the right thing to do, that these were the laws of nature. The day came when the enclosure was opened, and the cheetah cubs ran out into the free world for the first time. They looked back, as if saying goodbye. One of them approached Luna, gently touching her muzzle with its nose, and that was their last moment of closeness. Luna stood by the fence, watching them, and John felt his heart tighten with pride and sadness at the same time. That day became a symbol of a new life, a life full of danger, but also hope. And despite the distance, they would always remain a family.